Hello, welcome back to the channel. So power creep has definitely been a pretty big topic for like a while now, and while I do think it is a problem, I don't think it is as bad as some people say, and also I feel like some people think it's a problem for the wrong reasons, because I don't think it is necessarily because the new characters are too strong. Like, I think it's fine to have strong characters. I think the main problem is that a lot of the older characters' kits just suck. Like, they're just not, they're just bad. Like, especially a lot of the 1.x characters, which is why I feel a lot of the more, like, recent characters, like the 2.x sort of characters, has held up a lot better, since they have a lot better of, designed kits in general. Are they, like, as good as, like, the new characters? No, but, like, I wouldn't say that they're bad, they're still, like, fine. You can still beat the content with them, I do want to say, not all of the 1.x characters are bad. Like, Ruan Mei is still good, Tingyun and Brane can still be good in certain teams. I mean, Ho-Ho is probably like one of the biggest examples of a character from 1.x still being good. Now, that is partly just because we barely get any sustains at all, but her kit is also just good. But most of the other ones are pretty questionable. The main problem is, like, having things in their kit that just don't really help them do their job at all. This can be seen the most with their traces, which some of them, like, really feel like they just didn't know what to put, so they just gave them a random defensive property and just called it a day. For example, Seely's A2 is so bad for a lot of reasons. One, it only activates at 50% HP, and like, you weren't just gonna stay at low HP all the time to have that effect. So you're just not gonna have an A2 most of the time, and even if you get the effect, it only makes her less likely to be attacked, which is like one of the worst stats you can get, so it could just not work anyway, because you're just relying on RNG. And it just doesn't really make sense for her, was it? It's just because she can, like, go stealth? You could have made it so maybe it's like a first strike kind of thing or something, I don't know. Defensive traces just don't really work a lot of the time, since you're already going to have a sustain to fulfill that role anyway, and a DPS would much rather have something that makes them just do more damage, or makes them go a lot more often. Now, that is to say it can, like, never work. I mean, something like Maide's A4, where he just can't be CC'd, I think makes sense, since you can't control him, and he wants to just, like, attack as much as possible in a loop, The problem is a lot of the older ones just don't mesh at all with the rest of their kits. The most egregious one to me is Yanqing, because his kit is designed around, not getting hit, which is kind of a problem in of itself, but... So then, why would you make E4 give him effect res only while in Soul? So you're only going to get the effect for one hit, since getting hit deactivates Soul Steel Sync. You're basically, unless you were running a shielder, and even then if you're running a shielder, you're probably gonna have a bunch of effect res anyway. So like, there's literally no real point of having this. But this kind of leads me into like the next sort of problem, which is that a lot of them having restrictions where they don't really need them, or just making them feel really bad to play. Yugong is kind of a pretty big example of this, because I can understand wanting some kind of restriction on her skill, because a 80% attack buff is a lot, but the way it works now just makes it so awkward that, like, you can't really use her on a lot of teams, and also it makes you super reliant on her E6 to even be somewhat decent. Like, if you're gonna make the number so high that it just makes her play really bad, then just don't make the number so high and make her skill work like the rest of the characters, Or, Bailu's skill being, like, random, when it doesn't really need to be, especially when it doesn't even have a cleanse. And it's not like her skill gives invigoration, only her ultimate. It's not like it would be broken or anything if you could just target all of her things, because right now it's just really annoying to use her. Having restrictions isn't necessarily a bad thing, since, someone like Herta, needs another erudition character to get the 80% crit damage buff, but, like, there is a good and a bad way to do restrictions. The good way is, like, it's sort of relatively easy to fulfill and, like, actually feels like worth it to do, and isn't just really annoying to play around. The bad is just making the character feel really janky, just for the sake of having, like, a slightly bigger number. I'll use Yanqing as an example again. Like, honestly, Yanqing doesn't even really need his restriction at all, because his damage isn't even that high to begin with. Like, you could just not have it at all and he will be fine, because you're basically forced to run him with a shielder to even be able to have good uptime on his damage. I think that the core problem with a lot of the 1.0 characters is that they just either don't do enough to really justify using them, or just have kits that are just fundamentally flawed and just don't make any sense. Since a lot of them were just designed to kind of just be like generically good, which doesn't really fit how much more like archetype-centric the game is now. I mean, you have someone like, like Japard, who's basically most of his kit is designed around his talent of dying, but most of the time, you just shouldn't be dying in the first place, so you're just almost never going to be getting that, because if your sustain is dying, you probably have more problems than that. Or even characters like Welt or Clara, who like aren't terrible. I mean, you can use them, but like their kits just feel really underwhelming and just feel like they need like changes and just don't really have a place in the game right now. And like that is why I think buffs for older characters are so important. Not every character needs to be like S-tier, like Castor's level of broken, but every character should at least feel good to play and feel like they have a place, whether that is in a specific team or like a certain game mode, just something. I mean, we have seen that like buffs can make the difference with Silverwolf going from pretty mediocre to one of the best supports in the game right now. And I mean, the other characters were also a lot better. I mean, I feel like the one who got the worst off was probably like Jing Liu, but I do think she is still better than she was before. But Blade is a lot better than he was before, and Kafka is definitely better than she was before. I do really hope that they do start ramping up buffs soon, since 2 or 3 months, I forget, I don't remember, I think it was like 2 months to buff 4 characters is way too slow considering like how many characters we get every single patch. And I hope that they don't just do limited 5 stars, since a lot of the standard characters and 4 stars could really use buffs, because even back then a lot of the 4 stars did kind of suck. Now I do want to say that like none of this is me saying that these characters are unplayable, because you can make almost any character work with enough investment and support. The problem is that they just have fundamental problems in their kit that hold them back from being as good as they could be, and they just feel really bad to play right now. That is just the main problem. Like, it doesn't matter if you can make them work if they just feel like shit to play. Lowering the power level of the new characters just I don't think would work, because one, I think you're just too far down this path where if you make the new characters weaker, people just aren't going to pull for them. And also, when a new character isn't broken, people complain that they're not good. When they are good, they're just not as broken as a lot of the newer characters. And also, characters being strong is just more fun. Like, let's be honest, it just is. But the main reason I do think it is important is because it gives people more options, especially in terms of 4 stars, because most of the 4 stars in the game are from 1.x, and it's like we know that they can make good 4 stars with like Gallagher and Hunt March and Mose, but they just don't do it. So like if they could at least buff the ones that are already in the game, that would help a lot. So it doesn't feel like you can only rely on 5 stars to make a good team. I really hope that they do announce buffs in the 3.4 livestream, and it isn't just going to be a one and done thing, since I think that would be really bad and would piss off a lot of people. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.